can't get you off as to see me in pain, but I think I love you. You make my heart scream.
Okay, once you get that transverse tube out, now we're going to loosen these up. They take a lot of pressure, and it will take at least a 1/2 inch breaker bar and probably a cheater bar on top of that. If you don't have power tools, I mean, I'm not going to use power tools on this particular job, but so you need to, there's a clip inside here, right there. You just grab onto that clip and pull it out. Now take some kind of penetrant or WD-40 or anything and kind of clean this area out, because you want to clean the threads prior to removing it, just so you don't get it stuck or gall up those threads in any way. There probably isn't a whole lot of crap in there. I'm going to blow it out. As clean as it's going to get. Now we take our 30mm, and I don't think that's going to budge, so I'm going to put the big cheater bar on it. There it goes. Okay, that's your bearing. 10 out of 10 of these will be just fine, but you can always check it anyway. And it's fine. Now inside here there's a stud. Now go over to the other side first and remove this from the other side before you you go loosening this. I guess you can loosen it, but you don't want to remove this all the way. So I guess I'll break this loose right now. And since I'm over here filming, I think that is a 14mm. Yep. So 14mm, I would highly suggest that you use some 1/2 inch tools for this job. If you've got a 14mm 6-point socket, don't use a 12-point on here. You might round them off. This is in there very, very tight as well, and it's going to take a lot of force. I have broken more than one 3/8 socket on this thing and have since learned use the 1/2 inch. There we go. Okay, now with that off, we're going to go over the other side and do the same thing over there. On this side we got the same thing. We got the circlip on there. Clean it out. And we're using our 30mm on there. Now this is just the lock nut. This side here, which is I think that 14mm, is not going to be hard at all to remove. So this it's just as loose as can be already. Now before we finish taking all this off, you have to make sure that your shock is disconnected from that swing arm. So for some reason it's a 14 on one side and a 15 on the other. It's because it's BMW. There's your bearing on that side. Got the stud out of there, and now it is ready to come out. Okay, with everything out of the way, you can pull this out. Your drive shaft is still in there. That'll just stay there for now. We'll take that off in the next step. You can see this is where the where all that fluid was coming out of down on the final drive. When I pulled that boot off and all that stuff dumped out, there it is right there. So this seal right here, the output shaft seal, went bad. All right, in order to get the drive shaft off, you take a screwdriver and wedge it in between there and pry against the against here. Just give it a quick, and it'll pop right off of there. There it is, piece of cake. Now to continue on with our prep, in order to be able to lower the transmission or raise the bike off the transmission, there's a lot of things that we still need to take off. We need to take off this air horn because we need to remove or loosen up and lift the air box off of the throttle bodies. So in order to do that, there's one bolt that's right up in here. It's very difficult to get to. You can get to it, you know, if you want to come in this way. What I like to do though is on every one of these bikes that I come across, I drill a small hole here in order to get my tool through there. It's something that BMW, I think, should have done right from the start. It just makes it a whole heck of a lot easier. So just drill a small hole in line with that head. There we go. And now you just go right through and you're able to access that one very easy. And once you do access that and you pull that out, your side cover just covers up that hole. You'll never see that. And you got two more here. You got one that's right holding the air horn on here. And then there's a little bolt screw up there that needs to come off as well. And then you can pull the air horn off. This up here is probably a metric size, but I use a 9/32, and it fits on there perfectly. Just a little tap screw. You just pull off the air horn. And then that's a good time to always look inside there to see if is there any anything from any mice. Did you have any mice problems get in there? Doesn't look like it, but on this one. But I like to put this thing. I like to put this thing somewhere where I'm going to find it real easy, because once you get this thing, you start putting it all back together again. It's really easy to forget that you did that, and well, I know just what that's like, because I've put the whole bike back together again, put all the covers on, the gas tank, everything, and then I find this. I'm like, oh. Now back on the left side of the motorcycle, we have to take off this support bar here, because the engine is going to tip down, and it just helps to get this out of the way. I like to put these bolts back in there just because it helps to keep these things aligned a little bit better, and you don't lose them that way. Okay, next we're going to take off, you have to take off this shroud off of the radiator. So there are a couple of 25 millimeter screws on there, or not 25 millimeter, but T25s. You guys just need to know what I'm saying versus, what I'm actually saying. Okay, and then once you get that off, pop off the throttle cables that are in the little holder on the top, and work it out of there. It's a tight fit, but it does come out. If you don't want to remove the thing the whole way, you don't really have to. I am going to remove it for the sake of this video. There's a plug underneath it. You can see where it's plugged in, and just unplug it. Now with that out of the way, we need to pull the fuel rail off and the injectors. We need to pull those out and get them out of the way. So there's two 10 millimeter bolts on top that are holding this in. And sometimes in order to get clearance, you need to remove the fuel lines that are coming in. I don't know that I have to. Sometimes you can get away with not removing them. I'd rather not remove them if I don't have to. Because you need to, once you remove these, you need to be able to access the O-rings that are on there. So I like to take and try to flip it out this way so I can get to the bottom O-rings. Okay, on this one I'm going to have to remove the fuel line. I can't get where I want it to go. Now, if you do wind up removing your fuel lines, you're going to have to, it's going to take a little extra effort to get the thing started up again, because the fuel's not going to be in there, but trust me, you can do it. All right. As you can see now, we can get to the O-rings that are on here. Next thing you want to do now is you want to loosen up the air box, and you're gonna go after the clamps, the screw clamps that are at the very bottom, down by where the injectors go. You might not be able to see them too good in the video, but there's 4 of them there. Just kind of loosen them up. They don't have to be, you know, loosened so far that they come out, because that would be a real pain to put those back together. But this is where you got to go with this, so just loosen those up. Usually you got to do a little bit of prying in order to get that thing up there. And once you find a few spots to pry in, you can, it'll come loose. You just need to lift it off of there. You don't need to remove it or anything. There we go. Okay. So once it's loose, that's it. It's out of the way. And then we can get on with the other things. Now over here in the front of the engine, there is the bolt. You just have to loosen this bolt up. There is a nut on the back, and sometimes you got to get a tool in there in order to, you know, to be able to loosen this up enough so that the engine, when it does pivot, it can kind of move up out of the way. And I do need to get a wrench in there. I believe it's this one. I think it's 16 millimeter. This thing is one of the hardest things to do on this job, believe it or not, is to get to that stupid bolt back there. There it goes. Okay. So you just need to loosen it enough, again, just so that it pivots. On the other side is the same thing. Go over on the other side of the engine, just loosen it up a couple turns. There's no nut on that one. They actually have, that one's welded in place. So that one's a little easier. Actually, it's a lot easier. Take care of that now. That's enough. Now on this side, pull this off so that this connector here for the radiator is loose. So the radiator, if it needs to move up out of the way just a little bit, when this pivots right here, you can do that. It's probably not even going to touch it, but it doesn't hurt to just pull this thing off and make sure it's able to move if it needs to. See, now it can just kind of push out of the way without breaking anything. You don't have to remove anything else from there. Now coming up on the top of the motorcycle, we have to remove that right there. That is the nut that holds on to the starter. So that's the electrical connection for the starter, and that has to be removed in order to drop everything out. There's another connection up here, which I'll get to in a moment. It's this wire that's right here that's connected in the back over this way. I'll show that in just a moment. That has to be removed as well. So it's best to use like a wobble socket on your extension in order to get it down in there and get it nice and square on there. And then you can remove that. Try not to lose it, although it will fall out. You know, if you do wind up losing it, not the end of the world, because you will be able to recover it once you drop the transmission out of the way. And then you can pull the wire off and just let it just kind of hang there so it doesn't get snagged. Okay, the next part is to remove this here. You can disconnect your battery. A lot of times I don't, but you do whatever you want. If you want to disconnect the battery, it's totally cool. That way you're not going to risk showering sparks anywhere. But for this part of the video, I'm not going to disconnect or remove the battery, because I don't trust those immobilizer things. Those things are just such a pain. Okay. Okay, once you get that off, you have to undo all the clips that are on here, all of your zip ties. So get rid of these zip ties because you need to pull this wire all the way out. Let's go ahead and pull that out and just get it prepared. And just kind of thread it forward so you know it's not going to snag on anything and impede your progress when you're getting the transmission out. Okay, that's ready to go. Hey, if you appreciate what I'm doing here, please check out my Patreon page. It's set up for people that would like to help support me a little bit more directly. What we'll cover in the next one is everything else that will be involved in removing the transmission, including removing the transmission. See you on the next one, guys.